and down in Mar-a-Lago, Orban of Hungary, who stated flatly he doesn't think democracy works. He's looking for dictatorship.
I want to bring in two top political minds to start us off tonight. Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California and Republican strategist Rina Shah, both here on set. And Congressman, I mean, there was a lot of Democratic anxiety going into the State of the Union last night. Biden's age has been a big concern for voters. How did you feel coming out of that?
The president hit it out of the park. I mean, he was brilliant. I thought the best part was actually when he talked about how his lifetime of experience gave him a moral clarity. And his whole life, he's been standing up for compassion, dignity, decency, and those are the values that are at stake in what he's going to fight for America's future. It was a rationale for his whole candidacy.
What do you make of how he was not saying Trump's name at all last night, just my predecessor, and now today, I think it was like 9 times. He had no issue going after him today in Pennsylvania.
I think one of the things people don't appreciate about the president is he's an institutionalist and he's quite traditional, and I think he honors the State of the Union, so he didn't think it was appropriate probably to use that at the State of the Union. It's appropriate on a campaign trail, and my guess is that's why he's willing to use it on a campaign stop.
Yeah, I mean, Republicans, though, as you saw them last night, they were saying, the complaint initially had been Biden's too old to be president. They were basically waiting for him to trip walking down the aisle to get up there. But then they were complaining that he was loud. They said he was divisive, that it was too political of a State of the Union speech.
Yeah. I went in with really low expectations. I was expecting to sort of even lose engagement at some point, but he kept me engaged the whole night. I was really surprised. So very surprised also that early on in the speech, it was like, whoa, what am I listening to? It was very a la Donald Trump at a podium without all the other divisive talk and the name calling. And there was a moment also where I got what I wanted this week, because I started Republican Women for Biden in 2020 with the expectation that I would vote for a Republican this time. And this past week, I cast my vote for Nikki Haley, proudly casting my first vote ever for a woman as president. So I will say, I was thinking to myself, what do I want to see from this president? How do I not want to see him fail as somebody that cares about this country and wants to put country over party? I wanted data points, and I got exactly that. On the economy, primarily is what I was looking for. But also, one part where I wanted a little bit more and I didn't get it, Caitlin, was the border, immigration, because that's where I felt the Republicans were throwing it in his face last night with Lake and Riley, tying that to crime and public safety, the border issues and immigration.
Can Republicans still legitimately use the age thing after seeing how he did last night?
I think they can. Because he's not aging in reverse. There are going to be moments in this next many months where he's going to look tired, like humans do. Somebody who's 80 is not going to have the vigor of somebody who's in their 50s. And that's just the challenge. But hey, this can happen for Trump as well. What the Biden campaign needs to keep doing is reminding folks of the moments where Donald Trump seems cognitively impaired, that he's just 3 years his junior, Biden's junior. So again, age is going to continue to factor in, but the cognitive ability, he certainly showed he was up to the mark last night. It's how he continues the momentum.
Well, that is the question. I mean, Republicans set the bar so low for him last night that it was just easy to essentially walk over it. But the question is, can he keep up that momentum? Is that something, what are Democrats saying about that and what that looks like for the next 8 months?
There was enthusiasm this morning in the House Democratic caucus. I mean, it's no secret that there were some people who were murmuring, is he up to it? And he decisively answered that, at least for Democrats. But he did something more than just show energy. I think he took this age issue and did a jiu-jitsu. He said, at a time in this country where we're polarized, where we're anxious, where there are people who are talking about hate, let me tell you, my lifetime of experience tells me what it means to be an American. I was born in World War II, where we stood up for freedom. Those are the values that help define me, and those are the values that I'm going to fight for. I think he showed that it can be an asset at this moment.
Is that an effective tactic, you think? Is that what his argument about his age should look like going forward?
I do. Look, Jeffrey Katzenberg, his chair, has been saying, go embrace your age like Harrison Ford does. He can't be Harrison Ford, but I think he found a way to explain why experience, why statesmanship, why a lifetime of living America's story matters at a time where America's story is being attacked. Right? There are two different visions. And he's saying, here's the story I grew up with. Here's why I want to fight for these values. It's given me a clarity of why we have to be an inclusive society.
You mentioned polarization, and you heard President Biden today. One thing, it was just surprising because, when you're reporters traveling with him, you're always wondering, does he notice what you're noticing on the way to the events, which is a lot of supporters, but also a lot of protesters because they know where the president is coming. And he's talking about the 6-year-old giving the middle finger. I mean, it does speak to the moment that we're in as a country. Does a vigorous speech make a difference, I guess, for something like that?
Look, I think the president got a lot of things right last night. His motorcade was rerouted because of the protesters out there calling for a ceasefire, which he's already says he wants now. To me, it's a little late, but look, I'm an interesting, different voter on all this. My biggest gripe with the president right now is somebody who has a family history where my family escaped a dictatorship, and that's squarely why we're in this country. We had to escape Idi Amin in Uganda, and I know what that's like. So when you have that personal experience with dictatorships and defending democracy, you understand it, but not everybody feels this way. I've had numerous conversations with Republican operatives even who don't feel like the defending democracy message is good. And they also feel like, what kind of democracy do we even have? So I think the president needs to pivot and talk more about kitchen table issues.
The border and immigration.
Indeed.
We'll see if he does that. Rina Shah, Congressman Ro Khanna, great to have you both here on a Friday night on set. And meanwhile, as we noted at the top of the show, in this bigger conversation about democracy,